post and his quote. And I was very pleased to see that. That was on the issue of abortion, which is another just dreadful thing that we don't even, well, I don't even know what to say. It's so ridiculous. It's dreadful. Sorry.
I'm enraged.
Yeah.
I'm truly enraged, and I'm so tired.
Yep.
But I know we can't get tired.
Right. We cannot get tired.
You know, my mom, for those of you who were, I did led pastor study last week, the 7 o'clock session. And, you know, I was talking about how my mom was coming into town, and she arrived on Saturday afternoon, and was at church with us on Sunday. And, you know, she and I and my youngest son, Caldwell, were laying in bed. And my mom kept saying, "Why are you so restless?" You know, part of it was that I was tasked with giving the prayer for the people on Sunday. And, you know, I'd worked on it. And then I found out about, you know, Buffalo, and sort of thinking of, you know, how to respond. And, you know, part of me wanted just to get up there and read some Claude McKay, If We Must Die. Another part of me wanted to get up there and read Negroes Get Your Guns by a former Metropolitan pastor and AME Bishop, Henry McNeil Turner. I have both of those texts on my computer, and maybe we'll go into that. I want to spend as much time as, you know, we need to just share and to think, although I do think that some of what we will be some of the material in Deuteronomy, which is where we are in Holy Imagination, is relevant to this conversation, right? But before we go there, I just want to hear for some others. Or we don't, or we can just, we could do it. We could spend some time like a friends meeting and just be in each other's presence here virtually, and just, you know, speak when the Spirit moves us to speak.
Brother Gioni.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that bother me right now, but one thing that I've been looking for and I haven't seen, and doubt that I will see, and I don't care whether you're conservative or liberal or Democrat or Republican or independent, I haven't seen anyone from those conservative or Republicans of any stature say, "We're sorry." I haven't seen one. Maybe I missed it. And that bothers me, that if they haven't said "I'm sorry," that means it's okay. And that bothers me.
Hello?
Yes, Tracy?
Oh, hi, how are you? Well, I agree. But they're not gonna do that. And I'm sure many of you probably also have saw the response from the president, and they're literally not thinking about doing anything that they can do to try to halt this type of behavior. And I mean, as you all probably know, this is not a new behavior, of course. This has been going on for generations. But in our generation, this is like every time you close your eyes and wake up. There's things that can be put into place to make the laws to look into these domestic terrorists. They know that they've done stuff before. They know they can get into them, but they won't pass the laws to look at domestic terrorists as they look at Muslim terrorists or somebody else from another country. They can do a lot, and they won't. It's so unreal. We know that, but I can't give up. Like the young lady said earlier, we have to make sure that we continue to teach the true history of this place where we find ourselves, and take the good things that the ancestors put together for us and add more to it. And we have to have an inside strategy and an outside strategy. Whether we have to vote, we have to do these things to get the right people that will do what we want and will make them do. We can't just give up. And we can't, it's horrible and hurting as this is. These are our people, and whatever people of color they are. So it's wrong. And I feel very tight about it. So thank you.
I want to ask you guys a question. Was anybody upset that dude made it out of the store alive? That the police took him alive?
Yes, and I'm closing down.
Huh?
Say that again. Upset
Was
about-
anyone upset that the police let that man live? That they didn't let him take his own life, or they didn't take his life? Was anybody upset? I know I saw one or two hands.
Yes.
I think that the police wanted to take a stand on that matter, and the other thing is for many races in this country, he is a martyr, this guy, and so this, even putting him in jail, it's not, he probably knew that this was going to be his outcome. And he's hailed as a hero by many, some in secret, saying he's doing the work of the people with this wicked agenda. And so unfortunately, racism, I don't think we're going to ever have a racist free country in America. And but there is hope. I've told a story many times before. I'm not going to repeat it now. I had an encounter with a racist patient, and many years ago, and he was one of my dialysis patients, and he went to the authorities to get rid of me. He said he couldn't even stand to be in the presence of a nigger, and he didn't want me to even walk past him in the center. And ultimately, in the end, love won over, because I kept doing my job and kept going past him and trying to engage him. And eventually, before he died, he was asking me to give him a hug. So that gave me hope that we can stop some of this racism going on. We got to start real early with children at a very young age, so it won't get embedded in their hearts, because some are going to be raised in very racist homes, and they're not going to know any better. And so we have, as people have said before, we have a lot of work to do. We can't give up, and we got to keep pressing on and try to change the hearts of as many people as we can that have this kind of thinking, and some we won't be able to reach. Mental illness is out of control now, and that added to being a racist, we're going to have many more incidents.
I'm gonna put it like this. I'm gonna say this because I was gonna ask this question, but the only love I feel is for the families of those victims.
Yeah.
I don't feel no love, for
Oh,
that
no,
man or
don't get
anyone
to
else.
love them immediately. I don't feel any love for them right now myself, but because I haven't had any personal encounter with them. But I don't know. We don't know what is in store for that particular guy that committed this crime, whether God will change his heart, and even while he's in jail. So, but
am I a bad Christian because I want this man to burn in hell?
Well, who knows? God may send him straight to hell. We don't know. We don't know what God's plan for
It's
him.
certainly an option.
To hell, but then he could also become a saint later on. So,
I mean, maybe, but I'm feeling like I don't care if that ever happens to this man. Am I wrong?
no, because in the moment, while this is a fresh incident, you're going to be enraged, and that's good.
I feel that same way about Dylan Roof, and that was 7 years ago.
Yeah, I know. And then sometimes you're enraged all over again because that some people commit a crime and then you see that they getting out. What's this guy Hinckley? He didn't commit a crime against Black people, but here he is claiming that he's having a rock concert. And I was thinking, I said, had that been a Black man, nobody would be trying to promote his rock concert after he's shot somebody.
I just
Well,
don't
to
think
me,
that killing doesn't do it.
it confirmed to me that unfortunately the police department has a lot of racists in it. Because had he been a Black guy or anybody else, they would have shot. When he walked out, they would have destroyed him. And you look at what happened in South Carolina with Dylan Roof, they bought this boy a hamburger.
Mm.
Now you have to ask yourself, had this person been a person of color, would he been able to walk out and put his hands on his head? As soon as he walked out, he would have been shot because he was clearly a threat. So why would the police hold back from shooting this guy? So to me, it's hurtful, but it drove home the fact that not only do we have racists who will inflict violence upon the population, but we have racist police who will protect these people. And my hope for this guy, someone asked, if you wish that he'd burn in hell, I hope that he ends up in a prison that is worse than hell.
Yeah, that's my thinking. That is prisons, and send him to one of the for-profit prisons too, for heaven's sakes. Yeah.
Let me. We're all people of faith, Christians. We follow Jesus. We believe in a Jesus, a loving Jesus, but also a Jesus who stood for justice and righteousness. How do we respond as, I Tracy talked about voting and whatnot, but how are we, good church folk, people of Metropolitan, how do we respond? How do we wrestle with, I'm just going to name what's inside of me, the rage that I feel, the anger.
Well, first of all, you have a place to say it, and we accept you for that, Gioni. That is terribly important, I think. And but I just don't believe that killing does anything, just more killing. I just can't buy it as a Christian. And I guess I'm becoming a pacifist because it never stops. It just never stops.
Now, I never said kill him. We could cut off his ear like Peter did, but no, just fine.
Hello?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I feel that sometimes I hear your question. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Can I have it, please? Gioni, thank you, sir. Gioni, I hear your question. I feel or think that we got to recognize, and I'll say we generally, that we've been taught Christianity in such a way that we must just forgive when we abuse or beat up or kill, rape, what have you, in a way where what a lot of white Christians were doing to us in this country, that we are supposed to somehow accept it. And, he just doing what he's supposed to do. And even in the Bible, you know how Pastor Lamar's talked about, they had what they call the nigger Bible or the slave Bible. They took out certain passages and books that would say that people should stand up and fight against abuse. And so that stuff is ingrained in us, I think. And I don't think it's wrong to hold a lot of anger and rage when you are being abused. If I read the scriptures, Jesus was very upset about how the people were being treated. He was very upset, and he spoke out against it to the point they wanted to kill him. And so we have to do several things. Like you said, I said voting, that's one thing. But we have to get the help we need, the talking we need, therapy we need to deal with these poor people just lost their families. They're gonna need all kind of help. And we are supposed to be men, and we should strategize. We need to think it through. We need to know what we can do. And because not only justice, if we can bring them back. That's the only justice. But we definitely can punish, and the Bible speaks of that too. So that's what I would say to that, Joni.
Well,
So before we go on, and part of this is intentional, right? It's part of teaching. I'm sharing, but I'm also trying to teach. And we have not invoked prayer yet on our gathering. And I would like to do that. And I would like to do that by us collectively reading Psalm 143. Evan, can you pull up Psalm 143? Prayer for deliverance from enemies. And I believe this is the New Revised Standard Version. A Psalm of David. Hear my prayer, O Lord. Give ear to my supplications in your faithfulness. Answer me in your righteousness. Do not enter into judgment with your servant, for no one living is righteous before you. For the enemy has pursued me, crushing my life to the ground, making me sit in darkness
like those long dead.
Therefore, my
spirit faints within me.
My
heart
heart
within me is appalled.
I remember the days of old. I think about all your deeds. I meditate on the works of your hands. I stretch out my hands to you. My soul thirsts for you like a parched land. Selah. Answer me quickly, O Lord. My spirit fails. Do not hide your face from me, or I shall be like those who go down to the pit. Let me hear your steadfast love in the morning. For in you I put my trust. Teach me the way I should go. For to you lift up my soul. Save me, O Lord, from my enemies. I have fled to you for refuge. Teach me to do your will. For you are my God. Let your good spirit lead me on a level path. For your name's sake, O Lord, preserve my life. In your righteousness, bring me out of trouble. In your steadfast love, cut off my enemies and destroy my adversaries. For I am your servant. Thank you. Amen. A word of God for the people of God.
Yes.
So,
Gioni, there's I remember who's the Italian writer who wrote about going into hell?
Dante.
Yeah. And one of the deepest places that I like to think about is where he took the popes and they were all frozen, and he pounded on them all the way down, and as their penalty for what they had done. And it just makes me feel good to think about people who have done these dreadful things being frozen one on top of another, pounded down into hell. And maybe I just have I'm strange, but I'd like to think about that as kind of the ultimate punishment. I mean, there's all sorts of ways you could do it, but for some reason that one, particularly the popes, because we're really talking to people who are ruling this world, who are, particularly with money, who are just doing dreadful things. And I like to think of them pounded down there.
Right. So I wanted to this prayer, this Psalm 133 is known as an imprecatory prayer. I'm sure some of you who have been here for this have heard. I think one of the last times we talked about imprecatory prayers during Noontime Study was after your former president contracted COVID, and a lot of people were praying that
he would die.
It might not work out for him,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we were questioning, is that a Christian thing to do? Is that something that, and there are Psalms, right? We lift up the Psalms and these praise, things, but there are these imprecatory Psalms where the psalmists are pleading with God to bring down vengeance and fury upon their enemies. Now, I chose a relatively mild imprecatory prayer because it really ain't into the last, verse where it says, Lord, strike down my enemies, or whatever that is. Most of it is giving up praise to God and wrecking whatever. But there are some imprecatory prayers. I think Psalm 69 is one of them where it's brutal. Right. I mean, they're calling for God to get downright medieval on their enemies. Right.
Yes.
I think Janine lifted up Moses killing the Israelite.
Yeah.
I was when I got up earlier, I was looking for a book that's called This Nonviolent Stuff Will Get You Killed. And it's about firearms in the nonviolent civil rights movement and how so many of them, there's a story in the book about how Martin Luther King comes to comes to town, and he goes to sit down in the chair, and the people who he's staying with, oh, hold on, what up, Doc? Be careful, because there's a loaded pistol under the seat cushion, right? And Dr. King himself was denied permits. He wanted to protect himself, but he was denied permits, right? Mm-hmm. So, and who knew that Peter was walking around strapped for 3 years with Jesus until that last minute when he cuts off the ear, right?
Just like that.
So sorry, we got Pepco at the house, and my wife was asking me, they're gonna have to turn the power off for an hour. So hopefully we got a little time here before, otherwise the internet's gonna go off. So that's what happens. They give you a window of time from like 8 to 3. So, it is what it is. But so I want us to sort of, a lot of times, and Pastor Lamar has said this, we have this, nice, neat, easy view of religion and Christianity, and that it's all love, and we're supposed to sort of turn the other cheek. And even our interpretation of that,
Yes.
as my Hebrew Bible teacher told me, isn't really about being a passive. It's about being subversive, right? Because if you turn the other cheek, then it requires the person to hit you with a hand that would show respect, right? Because, you know, I mean, we've talked about this before. You hit some backslap, that's you know, you get out of here, right? You know, but if you hit somebody another way, well, then you're giving a little bit more respect. So I think it's important for us as we're dealing, you know, with I don't want to say it, but I have to say it. This probably ain't the last time something like this is going to happen.
Yeah, that's the real sad part.
Right.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
So as we encounter and sit with this moment and encounter future moments, right? I want us to acknowledge what we're feeling. Go ahead, Sister Aaron.
I just wanted you to know you're not the only one feeling the way you expressed. You know, I have difficulty with forgiveness in general. But when you know, there's levels of things that people do to you that you can forgive. But when something like this occurs, I have difficulty with just thinking about, you know, forgiving them and, you know, just punishing them to some extent, because I know his punishment won't be the punishment that he would have gotten if he was a black man. And like you said, this is going to happen again. And it's happening more and more. And, you know, the fact that he had issues last year in high school where he's threatening people, you know, and nothing happened to him then because he's still walking around with guns, you know, searching out people. And people like this, I don't know. Some people got to die, you know, for things to change, you know, and sometimes it can't always be us.
Debbie?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the fact that we know what's going to happen again is kind of why I'm not entirely against this idea of people not being able to walk away from these incidents, right? Because, like, I know Black people live in fear. I know I live in fear for Black men because of the world that we live in, right? And we all know that our community talks to our children about how to manage these things because we have this generational harm, right? But I don't know that there are white families talking to their kids saying, let's figure out how to deal with these feelings and this injustice so you don't go up and shoot up a school or shoot up a grocery store, right? Like, I just don't know that those conversations are happening. And so I think for me, there's no deterrent. There's absolutely no deterrent. Like, our lives are completely deterred on so many levels all over the place as Black people, but there seems to be no social pressure or consequence to not engage in this way. And so if there's a mass shooting and the shooter doesn't walk away, what kind of message would that deliver? Where would, you know, and I don't know that that's the answer, but I know that what we're doing right now is not the answer.
I had a conversation with a friend this morning, and I mentioned that there was a time when if a person got shot, you could say, well, this person was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Today, you can be in church, you can be in school, you can be at a grocery store, I mean, it's really disheartening. And there is an answer to it. I was watching a movie the other day, and this was a British movie, and they were talking about the fact that the police in London don't even carry guns. And I often question, why is it that we are the only country where you have this proliferation of mass shootings everywhere? And it's, if you outlaw the guns, the long guns, like this guy had, you wouldn't have shootings to this extent. That's simple, isn't it? I'm not saying you'd eliminate mass shootings altogether, but you wouldn't have them to this extent. But we don't even have the courage as a citizenry to elect people who will enact a law like that. And when I say we don't have the courage, I mean, it's not necessarily who you vote for, that you vote.
Well, Brother TJ, let me put this out there, right? Like, I mean, sure. And, I mean, if he didn't have, I assume he had an AR sort of semi-automatic long arm, right? But I mean, he could have had a 9mm, right? With extended clips. I mean, there's any number of different ways, but you take the gun out of his hand, I mean, Timothy McVeigh killed a lot more people
with a bomb that they have.
With a bomb.
Options,
Takes a little bit more effort with the bomb too.
I hear you, right? But at the end of the day, and I get your point about the proliferation, of guns. I mean, I saw a story today that gun manufacturing is at an all-time high, right? I mean, they're even talking more, not just sales, they're making new guns, right? Not just selling new guns, but actually making new firearms, right? But we're dealing with an ideology, right? I mean, there's legitimate, let me not say, people have legitimate mental health issues. I'm not willing to say that this is a mental health, issue. I don't know the kid, or anything like that. But how do you go from, I mean, this wasn't, he sought to kill Black people. I mean, I haven't seen all of the video. And I don't know that I ever want to see all of the video, but I've seen parts of it where he's pointing at a white man on the ground and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. I didn't mean to scare you." He was very clear about his intention, right? So, I mean, I think there's that, right? But then also, and I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer, but I want us as individuals who follow Jesus and as a community, a fellowship that follows Jesus, to think about how we respond. Right. One of the things that we say, or that has been said, is we want to discern what God is calling us to do in this season. I'm trying to figure out what that is, right? Anne-Marie?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I would argue, Brother Joni, that white racism and global white supremacy is a mental illness. And while we're, degreed people and academics who treasure the canon that is taught in the academy about what psychological mental illness is, we have to really, in my opinion, that's where I am right now. Global white supremacy, in the form of white racism, wherever it manifests itself, however it manifests itself, is an untenable psychological state. They can't, you cannot, we can't.
We don't have a medication for it yet.
Say it again?
I said, we don't have any psychotropic drugs to subdue or suppress those kind of thoughts. They've done all kinds
and it's not, I don't, Yes,
Yeah,
it's
some
not up
people
to us to name it. We're experiencing it. We're on the receiving end of it. Those of us, especially those of us of African descent and who are have been affected by this tenacious global white supremacist system. It's not up to us to fix it. It's not up to us to identify it. It's already been identified. We already know it's an illness. It's a sickness. Either those who believe in it and practiced it, either you live it or you address it. If you want to change, you change. Why is it up to me to tell you about what your hatred is doing, what your oppressive and blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Why do I have to keep, marching and waving flags and, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to have peace in my spirit, and I'm going to pray, because I believe that is very true, powerful energy. We have an obligation as people who follow the teachings of Jesus, who was pointing the way to God's kingdom within us. I'm not I'm not going to do a study. I don't think that we should endorse a study by, this poor little boy. No, this little boy is he's not a sole lone wolf. Now, you all may have already discussed that, so I won't go into, continue to on my little soapbox here, but I believe it's a mental illness. We need to, we, the collective, we Americans, global citizens, people who follow the teachings of Christ, people who believe in the spirit of God is love. That's our obligation.
I'm glad you said that. This is a white problem. And last Wednesday night, the McClendon Scholar Program had Jim Wallace. And the question was, can democracy survive? And his answer was, the only way it will survive is if all people, and this was kind of political, and it will give everyone the right and the dignity and the ease to vote. Because if we do not do this as a democracy, we will have another civil war. And Wallace founded Sojourners and is now over at Georgetown. He's a white guy, said this. And there are a lot of amens coming from the congregation. There are 300 people online and not many people in the service. But I think we whites have a job to do, and we sure and hell better get at it, or we will not have a democracy. And that will be just like every other, autocratic country that's.
I'm not sure I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
I'm not sure it's a mental illness. It's what this country is based upon, and how this country came to be what it is on murder, on stealing people, enslaving them, stealing their land, doing anything and everything that could be to build up through the idea of capitalism and making yourself rich and the country rich. And so I'm not sure that it's a mental illness. When people run around talking about critical race theory, there's some critical race theory going on.
I know.
But it's not by Black people that are doing this critical race theory. This is what you're taught in school. And then, there are times even as Black people grow up, sometimes we have some racist tendencies towards some other people sometimes that you have to really sit and think about. And you think about like some of the things that you did as a children, you know, when they talk about Native Americans, you kind of bought into stuff until you're old enough to really realize what that stuff was. But I think it's more than just a mental illness. It's what this country has continues to teach people. You know, now people don't want us to read certain books.
I wanted to share two things. When the conversation about mental illness came up, and we were talking about it more so as, you know, from the kind of racism and white supremacy itself as a form of mental illness, I also think it's important for us to, and I think we all sort of know, that racism and mental illness, racism and white supremacy can cause mental illness on the people who are oppressed by it, right? And I'd like to lift up this book, if you haven't seen it. It's called Black Rage. I believe it came out in 1969, right after, 1968, written by William Greer and Price Cobbs. William Greer is the father of David Allen Greer. These are two psychologists, African-American psychiatrists, in California who, you can see I wrote extensive notes here in this book, and they do a bang up job chronicling the mental, the harm that racism and white supremacy do to the Black psyche at every level, male, female, educated, college educated, high school, whatnot. I've been in search of a 2022 version of this and updated. Like, I would have assumed that there would have been some new scholarly research out there that sort of updates this book. I've talked to a lot of mental health professionals. I have a very good friend who is the head of student mental health at UCLA. I said, has anyone come behind them? She's like, nope, this is it. So if you're interested in the psychological effects of racism, this is a very, very, very good book. I'd encourage you, to pick up. But
who's the author again?
It's William H. Greer and Prince M. Cobbs. Greer and Cobbs. Black Rage. I'll let you guys know something about me, but don't ever repeat it. I'm a very slow reader. I am incredibly slow reader. But I got through this one in like no time. I think it's the subject matter, but it's a very easy read as well. And you want to get there. But one of the things I wanted to sort of talk about, Janine dropped the idea of replacement theory, right? The idea, it's this notion that elites, that people of color and like Black people and immigrants are coming to replace native born whites, which I don't even really understand that concept. But anyway, I think we all understand what he's trying to say. And another thing I want us to sort of think about and wrestle with as people who study God's word, right? And we are in the book of Deuteronomy. And we were talking about, and I think it was Debbie, or maybe it was, Linda and Debbie were both sort of talking about how, oppression, exploitation of people and natural resources and the environment sort of baked into what is America. Right? Those are your words, not mine. I agree with them, but so let's turn our attention here real quick. Pastor might not invite me back if we don't at least talk about Deuteronomy for a little bit. So I got to do a little something. Then we can get back to it, but it's relevant. I think all of this that we're talking about here is relevant. And Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 6.
If we
The
just
Lord
say
our
five,
God,
we've said it.
the Lord our God spoke to us at Haborah, saying, "You have stayed long enough at this mountain. Resume your journey and go into the hill country of the Amorites. as well into the neighboring regions, the Arabah, the hill country, the Shephelah and the Negeb, and the sea coast, and the land of the Canaanites and the Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. See, I have set the land before you. Go in and take possession of that land that I swore to your ancestors, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and give to them and their descendants after them. Sounds like the Canaanites are about to be replaced. Sounds like God is giving them a mandate to conquer. Now, one thing that we will know, and I'll do this at another time because I want to keep this conversation going. You know, Evan last week gave me a very good suggestion, and just sort of share some of the resources that I use to prepare for Bible study, and we can go over that at another point in time. But what I will say is that the scholarship suggests that a lot of the book of Deuteronomy, which is the capstone of the Pentateuch, right? The first 5 books of the Bible. It's the capstone. It repeats the law. Deuteronomy means this, you know, second law, or second reading, or something like that. But it's a restatement of the law, and it also sets the stage for what's going to go forward. So the next couple of books of the Bible, all the way up through Kings, sort of refer back to Deuteronomy, right? Set the stage, and there's tension. But one of the things that scholars of the Hebrew Bible talk about is that a lot of Deuteronomy was written either during exile or post exile. So the Babylonian exiles, you know, we hear about these, right? So these are people reflecting back, you know, I mean, or they're writing after or while they're in the midst of having been taken over by other people, right? Or had just come out of that, and clearly part of their psychology is the reasons why they're either denied entrance into the promised land, or the Israel is taken away from them, is because they have disobeyed God's law, right? And we'll get into that more as we delve into not only the book of Deuteronomy, but the other books in the history. But I want you all to think about that, right? Within this context that we're talking about here, we're talking about, I mean, we've lived with, people of African descent in America live with the social, political, economic, educational consequences of a theology that says God has put me and my people on top, and I can do whatever I want to you, him, her, that. Only reason why you are in that position, because you ain't got, you know, like what Reverend Ike said, you know, you ain't got what I got. You know, you can't lose with the stuff I use, but you can't have it. It ain't for you. It's for me and my people, the ones that look like me. So no, Brother TJ, you ain't safe at the grocery store. You ain't safe at church. You ain't safe driving down the street, going for a run. But is that what God wants for us?
God doesn't want us to be immobilized by fear. he wants, if we're angry and hurt and upset, he wants us to use that to energize us to try to make changes in our bad situation. But if you get too consumed with anger and fear, then you don't do anything, you know, to move on and try to change things. So that's just my opinion. You can be, initially when you face a bad situation, of course you're going to be extremely angry and outraged and everything, and you got to use that fuel to like I say, attack the problem. And like you were saying, brother Gianni, maybe we're praying the wrong prayers, because in these passages that you show, they were praying for God to help them deal with the enemy. And maybe we don't want to ask God to kill the enemy, but in those passages, that seemed to be what they were asking for, you know, just to annihilate the enemy. And we are facing a lot of people that are racist, and their purpose in life is, they say they're waiting for the civil war to occur, and they want to annihilate us. So we got to have some kind of strategy and plan to deal with the enemy. I don't know. Prayer is the first thing.
I think you hit on a very important point. Like, what kind of prayers are we praying? To me, a passive prayer, let me not put it like that. The essence of a powerful prayer is when we pledge to act with God for that which we are asking of God. Right? Now, don't get me wrong, there's times to shout and pray, you know, jump up and down, whatever. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. If religion ain't revolution, then you're just getting high. Open a bottle of brown liquor, light a joint, put on some good music and dance, whatever makes you feel good. Because if all your religion is doing is just making you feel good, then you're just getting high.
Gianni, when I pray thy will be done, it's not at the exclusion of myself. And that would be passive. Thy will be done, leaving it all up to God.
Yeah.
I think we all have a responsibility to act in the face of wrong, and to rely upon God to guide us in terms of what that action should be, what it should look like.
And it's different for everybody, right? I mean, after, George Floyd was murdered, Gianni 20 years ago may have been down at the White House with everybody else. But, I got a mortgage and tuition and I don't run as fast as I used to, all kinds of different things. That wasn't for me. I couldn't do that. But me and my family stood at the corner of 4th and Rhode Island, Northeast, and encouraged other families to come out. And we did it in our way right there, right? I wrote, my oldest son, who came out with me that first day, who looked at me like I was absolutely insane when I'm marching down the street by myself, holding up a sign that said a man was lynched, with a Bluetooth speaker in the other hand playing Bob Marley's War. 3 weeks later, he's leading the protest, telling the police escort, we're going this way, not that way. And his shoes weren't even tied. Right? So, but that ain't for everybody, right? I had a friend who was like, look, I'm 8 months pregnant. It's hot. I can't be out there, but I'll make signs for you. Right. So anyway, but I want us to I thank you all for this. This isn't easy. And I want us to think, about all of these things that we're wrestling with and what does it mean to our faith and how we actually live, our faith individually and in community. Debbie, I'll give you the last word.
I was just going to say about everybody doing their part. When my friends' parents were in town, I took them to the African American History Museum, and we were at the lunch counter, and so they started telling stories about that time because they were in school in North Carolina. And her mom was saying, I wasn't comfortable with the protesting, like that wasn't my place, but I did stay behind and I worked on people's homework and I made sure that they stayed up in school while they were doing the things. So everybody plays their part to make sure that, things happen. So.
All right. Well, thank you all. Let's just close out in prayer, dear Heavenly Parent. We thank you for this opportunity again to be with each other, to study your word and to share our feelings. There is power in lament. There is power in anger. There is knowledge that can come about from fear, but we know that these negative emotions, the emotions of fear and anger and anxiety, are not places where we need to stay. We need to move forward, even though moving forward may be scary at times, but we know that we are called to be co-laborers with you and with each other to bring about an earthly kingdom of peace and justice. And then